Hi, it's nice to see everybody here. Yeah. And welcome. Happy Friday and good whatever time of the day it is for you. Evening, morning, afternoon. So today, right now it's Mahamudra for the people. I'm going to continue on today with
Are folks able to hear Lama Justin? No, Lama Justin, we're not able to hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay, try it again.
Yes.
Yes.
Poltergeist.
Yes. And now I've been told that my internet is unstable. So forgive me if for some reason that is the case. Lord knows why that would be the case. But does anybody have any questions about anything we've done up until now, or thoughts, or anything from your practice? Yeah, Travis.
Yeah, I think in our last session a couple weeks ago, you asked us to contemplate the distinction between awareness and discursiveness, and I've been with that a lot, and I want to just share the first thing that just to kind of offer to the group, or just to see what response you have. And like the first kind of main thing, insight, something is that like a thing that awareness is unborn and discursiveness is born. So like this kind of where there's just a kind of where there's just activity that seemed to be like just a sort of flow of awareness. But then as soon as it was a thing, then like I was like, oh, maybe that's a kind of discursiveness. And then I was thinking, as I shared with you, I've been practicing Chenrezig, and like the and how that mantra is about like protecting against birth in all these realms. So I was like, okay, maybe there's something there about like not like taking birth or not solidifying into a kind of identity or something like that. And then I thought maybe that's where, sorry, this is going a little bit tangential, but like maybe that's where like Avalokiteshvara in the Heart Sutra, and that kind of like not being able to pin down connects up with like Avalokiteshvara's like Bodhisattva and that mantra preventing birth. And those dots never connected for me, and I don't know if it's correct to connect them, but somehow that all sprang from thinking about like just sort of openness and awareness versus this sort of like now it's a thing, or like it's born as a as an opinion, or as a as a concept of any sort. So so that's some stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Travis. Yeah. Does anybody have any, before I say anything, does anybody have any kind of similar reflections or dissimilar reflections on yeah, okay. Yeah, Gendon.
I just resonate with the inquiry that you're trying to sort of put words to, Travis. And last time I asked a question about what to do with how like that sense of like, oh, I'm there, I got it, and that kind of taking me out. And I was thinking about how, like, trying to find words for that, or like, I feel like my experience has been different since we talked about it. in that I recognize just how much I want to turn that awareness into an object, or like, I think in particular for me, I want it as a possession. And so it goes right to God, like right to some kind of thing. But then as soon as that space, like I label it unconsciously or sort of commodify it or whatever I do with it, then I'm back into sort of dualistic mind, I guess, like back into I'm suddenly I've created a barrier, I guess, and I think there's been a process of I think I identify so much with my thoughts that the awareness feels, it doesn't feel underneath, like it doesn't feel like the thing that's unborn. It feels like the thing that's born from the thoughts. And that's why I think my thoughts can somehow possess it or something. So I feel like I've been shifting my place of ownership more a little bit toward the awareness, or like shifting the sense of like, oh, what's going on here? What's not, I mean, maybe a better way of saying it is dispossessing the thoughts a little bit, disowning the thoughts. And then it feels like they could come and go, and it's sort of like, oh, that's just like the light in the room, that's just like the bed that's there, that's, you know, thoughts are just another thing that are happening in a space, kind of. Yeah, that's what your question made me think.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Does anybody else have any thoughts or no thoughts and just pure realization? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, I want to thank you both for bringing these reflections up. I'm also purposely not going to go near answering anything, not because I don't have anything to say about it. I do, but because there's a lot to be said for the benefit of experiencing these things for ourselves, right? There's, I was talking with one of my teachers last weekend about the benefit of lived experience in meditation, meaning the benefit of actually seeing these things that are discussed in texts and shared actually played out in our experience, because that is what is known as definitive wisdom, right? That is the that experience of confirmation through practice is what allows our practice to have a stainless sense of meaning and definitive characteristics that are beyond question because we've experienced them. So my advice is to continue to play, just like, and I think play is the best word, you know, kind of like when we stop and think, like, you know, I love to go to the beach, and I love to think about how many human beings like to go to the edge of land and like play in this very shallow water. And they'll play for days, sometimes they'll stay for weeks, just playing on the edge of the unknown, playing on the edge of the unknowable. It's exciting, it's scary, it's fun. It's all these things, right? And in our practice too, if our practice can be playful, where we are able to play at the edge of discursiveness and self-existing awareness, right? So Rigpa and dualism, or at the interface of duality and non-dual experience. That is how we know for certain everything that we're going to be talking about today, everything that we were looking at, a few weeks ago. But I think the kind of next question becomes, can you experience both at the same time? Can you experience this kind of discursive thought activity, anything from Gendon's expression of wanting to hold or grab or isolate the experience of awareness as it arises, or even just the kind of constant bubbling of the analytic mind. It's Friday. I'm making dinner tonight. After this teaching, I'm going to go for a walk and then figure out what to make for dinner. And I will want it to be more elaborate than it should be, so how to walk that line in my mind, and just letting ourselves be in the moment. So when we're able to experience awareness clearly, openly, and definitively, then provoke your dualistic mind and see what happens then. These practices have to be experimental for us to fully understand all of these processes, right? Because otherwise, it's like you take third Karmapa in his Mahamudra aspiration prayer. He's so incredibly clear. It's like mind-boggling. Longchenpa as well, like his contemporary, also phenomenally, breathtakingly skilled at capturing the essence of mind, the essence of Rigpa, and it's wonderful to read those things, and then their writings, and then we still have to experience for ourselves the way these things arise. Eric, your hand is raised.
Yeah. Thank you for all these reflections. On the idea of, it's such a paradox of like the confirmation of experience as being like a signal to like justify that all of this isn't just a complete waste of time. Right, that there's actually something going on, and not because like Lama or a beautiful text like tells me this is what's going on, but like independent from all of that, like something is changing. But I'm curious, and if this is anyone else's experience, that like maybe the best, and by best I mean like the thing that you can really only hope for is like a good enough confirmation, because if you try to like pin down the confirmation, you're going to lose it again. So it feels like it almost is like a kind of indirect confirmation. Like you have to look askance at it a little bit and like be satisfied, like finding satisfaction in whatever sense of confirmation arises, rather than trying to like fix onto greater and greater senses of confirmation. Does that make sense? Or do you just have to like sort of look at it like out of the side of your eye and say like, that's nice. That's the only kind of confirmation I've ever experienced. And so I'm wondering if like anyone else is having like, and like that, I have gotten to a place where that's like satisfying. I don't need more than that sometimes. But just curious about that, this sort of like askance glance at the confirmation without trying to make it something more than it is capable of giving me,
Yeah, that's a lovely point, Eric. Because otherwise, then we're just chasing, right? And especially looking for the big, like looking for people to cast Keanu Reeves as the meditator in the story of the Namtar of Eric. Yes, totally.
yeah, when do I get the sword or whatever,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, which is also good. I mean, my root teacher used to say, when looking for teachers, try to gravitate towards those who are childlike, who are kind of innocent seeming, playful, not taking everything so seriously and putting themselves, don't spell out the truth. And then at the same time, having some element of lived experience in our practice allows us to not fall back into self-doubt that will cause us to, because basically, like, one of the things we need to learn how to undo is the constant second guessing of our abilities and our skills in settling into practice. We are incredibly adept at putting ourselves down and incredibly adept at continuing to disempower ourselves. And so a certain element, and I agree, Eric, 100%, that, I don't think that we need to worry so much about the balance, because that also can become a pretty neurotic place to be. But a certain amount of confirmation allows us to say, okay, this is good. I'm making progress. I don't need to move 2 steps back just because I'm Western or just because of blah, 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 I'm new to Dharma or whatever. Yeah. So keep poking and keep prodding. And I guess, let's sit for a little bit, in the interest of making some time also just for the text. Maybe we could do this for about 12 minutes to the top of the hour. And it also might be a nice thing while we sit to rest into a knowing awareness. Also allows us to kind of just recognize that we are having an actual experience, right? So experiencing what's happening, feeling, resting into felt sense of what's arising, and going from there. So hopefully that's not too vague, and we'll sit like this for 12 minutes. I don't have a bell with me, so I'll just blab some words at the end. Okay, just slowly bring yourself back to this group. Okay, so where I have us, so I'll go back one page. So it's on page 29. Salinata Guangzhou says, the middle way, the unity of the two truths beyond limitations, Mahamudra, the basic wakefulness of the uncontrived natural state, and the great perfection, the original Samantabhadra of primordial purity, are all in agreement on a single identical meaning, that the mind is present in all beings and is, in essence, an original emptiness, not made out of anything whatsoever. By nature, it is unimpeded experience, aware and cognizant. Their unity, the unfathomable by the intellect, defies such attributes as being present or absent, existent or non-existent, permanent or nothingness. Spontaneously present since the beginning, yet not created by anyone, the self-existing, self-manifest natural awareness, your basic state, has a variety of different names. In the Prajnaparamita vehicle, it is called innate truth. The vehicle of mantra calls it natural luminosity. While a sentient being, it is named Sujata Garbha. During the path, it is given names which describe the view, meditation, and so forth. And at the point of fruition, it is named Dharmakaya of Buddhahood. All these different names and classifications are nothing other than this present ordinary mind. So, this is the lovely thing about this text, the heart of the matter, is that it's like a lullaby that allows us to relax out of our constant examination, right? And so when we practice, it's so easy to need it to be more than it is. Oh, my practice is Mahamudra, and it's Dzogchen, and it's Lamdre, and it's Madhyamaka, and it's this, and it's that, and it's Buddha nature, and it's Sujata Garbha, and it's the highest, and it's the best, blah, blah, blah. And so the whole, what Salinata Guangzhou is kind of saying is chill out, relax into the experience of your mind, and don't worry about conceptual designation. Just keep coming back to this, keep coming back. And we keep coming back so that we can actually kind of know this a little bit more clearly, right? The first time, I think to get into this point, the first few times we experience the clarity of mind and the nature of awareness, there's such a stark difference in experience that we grasp right onto it. Oh, there it is. And even if we're not consciously grasping, we're accidentally objectifying, the experience. It's kind of like we shift lenses to a zoom lens, right? And then we see it very, very clearly. But what we fail to recognize is that in changing these lenses, we end up preferencing one for the other. We're preferencing awareness over discursiveness, or awareness over the natural movement of the mind. The same way, sometimes we'll accidentally preference stillness of mind over movement, right? So this kind of instruction of practicing like an open window is aimed at letting whatever happen just be. So if it's thought activity and we're just maybe there's a lot that happened this week and we just have a lot running through our mind, and we sit down to practice, and that running of things through our mind is prevalent. And in that experience of prevalence of movement, just being present with that and letting that process happen. And then if it's stillness, it's no better, no worse, just resting into that experience of stillness. If it's kind of jerky, kind of going back between both movement and stillness, no problem. You have the capacity to sit, be present. And if it's clear awareness, same thing, no problem. You have the capacity to be able to rest into that experience. The big kind of trick sometimes is to not adjust our lenses, so like how to my youngest son has the biggest sweet tooth I've ever known a single human being to have. And so anything that remotely resembles the sound of the name of a dessert or a candy or anything, the moment just the mere combination of syllables that might sound like Oreo or gummy bear or Sour Patch Kid or whatever, jelly bean. He just kind of whoop, it's like a sixth sense. He's like, wait a minute, I sense like dessert somehow is in the house now. So, in his heightened state of awareness, he has this ability to kind of just zoom in on anything, even just, we'll walk by a store instantaneously. Oh, can we go in and get dessert? And so for us, as practitioners, we will do the same kind of thing, right? We are super heightened. And the moment something begins to happen, we zoom on, zoom into it, pay attention to that over other things. And sometimes it is the case that our practice is to understand the awareness and then to simultaneously let go of any kind of grasping. And that's a little challenging at first, right? Because typically the speed with which awareness arises brings us to an experience of a particular thing. It can be a particular state, a particular experience of mind, a particular awareness of a quality of what might be arising in the mind. Fine, let that knowingness arise, but let go of the grasping, and resting into this experience of knowing awareness that has no desire to grasp or to control or to objectify is really a beautiful, delicate place to be. Delicate in the sensitive way of just being, letting things happen and not having to own them. And that's a particularly special thing, is to not have to exert energy around, unlike my son, Marcus, who's just like, if he could own every sweet in the world, he would. But to actually enjoy them without having to own them. And that's actually kind of, for me, the ideal pleasure is enjoying things and not clinging to them, right? Not feeling sadness when we've exhausted the bag of gummy bears or gummy worms or gummy snakes or, the gummy anything really. So we're able to partake, enjoy, relax, but not grasp. And this becomes a tricky part of our practice. Does anyone know where to find a copy of The Heart of the Matter? Oh, there you go. Thank you. Eric is on it. He is the embodiment of awareness. Yes. Yeah. So Tseley Natsak Rongjo goes on to say, before being spoiled by delusion, it is called primordial purity. When deluded by defilement, it is named the all ground. The moment you recognize the falsity of delusion is called the view. To sustain that recollection undistractedly is known as meditation. To be undiluted throughout daily activities is named conduct. When habitual tendencies and delusion are purified, it's called fruition. Thus, the single mind itself receives endless names and classifications due to different situations of ground, path, and fruition. The eloquent ocean-like words of the Buddhas are all given solely for the purpose of realizing this nature. Still, people are bewildered and confuse themselves with all these names and words. Well, we know that. Being indivisibly cognizant, aware, and empty, this mind itself holds no duality of seer and seen. To see this is called realizing the natural state of the view. Setting aside the blessings of the true transmission, the element of devotion, neither perfecting the accumulations nor purifying the obscurations, someone endowed with a lucid memory, vast learning, and brilliant scrutiny is still unable to realize this nature. It requires a worthy person with the right karmic potential. So, what's particularly beautiful are statements like this. The eloquent ocean-like words of the Buddhas are all given solely for the purpose of realizing this nature. Still, people are bewildered and confuse themselves with all these names and words. Being indivisibly cognizant, aware, and empty, this mind itself holds no duality of seer and seen. The mind itself is inherently non-dual. All of the words of Rangjung Dorje, of Longchenpa, of Marpa, Tilopa, Naropa, Shakyamuni, all of these words are approximations. They're Willem de Kooning. I can't stop talking about this guy. The great painter described himself as a slippery glimpser. Adding a lot of, he added vegetable oil to his paint. So it took like years sometimes for some paintings to dry. And the beautiful thing about it was that he could have a painting on the wall in a studio that he could work over the course of a year, because the paint, the vegetable oil obviously takes an infinitely longer amount of time to dry than linseed oil. And it makes the painting dynamic and fluid and something he can, quote unquote, converse with over the course of a year. Similarly for us in our meditation, right? It's like, how interesting that we want the answer immediately sitting down to practice. And we want the instant download, like this zip file of pure Dharmakaya that's easy to understand, of course. we want that instantly the first time. And I think what we forget is that, much like painting or much like dance or much like writing or anything, any other thing, the meditation is about sitting, showing up, noticing, waiting for language to show up, waiting for direct experience to arise. And it's fascinating too, like Milarepa was essentially, killed by this, very jealous Geshe who couldn't understand, why somebody with relatively little schooling and intellectual knowledge knew so much, had so much wisdom, to the point that this became quite frustrating to him, and making him quite jealous that Milarepa had all of these people coming to visit him for instruction, and nobody was coming to visit this Geshe. And he's like, what the hell, man? Like, I have the Geshe degree. Like, I did all this stuff. I'm good at debate. I've memorized, Lord knows, I'm, many hundreds of pages of texts. And here's this guy who just meditates, and he thinks he's like, all that. It consumed this Geshe's mind to the extent that he poisoned Milarepa, right? But then the amazing thing is it's not like Milarepa in his experience of meditation just took Marpa's language and was like, "Oh, the mind is my Lama says the mind is like this, therefore, blah 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 blah." No, he sat in caves in the wilderness with his mind, with his fear, with his emotions, with his anxieties, with his terror, with his boredom, with his brokenness, with his, he had killed all these people with black magic, with his guilt and his shame. His mom like guilted him. If I had a good son, he would learn black magic and avenge the death of my husband. So like, Milarepa had to probably get over his like issues with his mom. All of these things, right? For us Western people, it would be like, oh my God, like, a lifetime of therapy. My mom asked me to kill my whole extended family with black magic. Like, so taking time to understand that, like, all of the work Milarepa put into his practice, and then how all of that work is what undergirds his language, his languaging, his ability to express the nature of mind. And because we tend to be really product oriented, like final project, final, like, product oriented, we want, this is the funny thing about these, like, pith instructions. Like, we want these pith instructions because I don't need to read a lot of shit. Like, I could just do, they're all they say, it's one, it's just one experience of one, it's the experience of ease, it's the experience of bliss. Okay, now I know what it is. Somebody's like, what's the nature of mind? Oh, it's the experience of bliss and ease. But we need to experience that for ourselves. We need to find what is bliss, what is ease. The mind is non-dual. That's wonderful, and I totally into that. And what does that mean? How do we experience that? What is the experience of non-duality like? And so, in this way, Tselinatsa Rangjo, like, some of the beauty of his language is also kind of pointing us in the direction of, like, it's time to get dirty in the mud. It's time to get off of the clean, neat meditation cushion, and let's get dirty into our experience. Dirty into the way we language, dirty into our expectations, getting dirty into our needs around how this whole thing sounds. And then, of course, so then there's this point about just all of the great qualities you can have. But even if you have all these great qualities, you're not always going to recognize the nature of mind. You know, and he says it requires a worthy person with the right karmic potential. And then he moves on and to, you know, some quotations from some siddhas, including the siddha Luipa. And Luipa is famous for eating fish guts, you know, hanging out on the banks of the Ganges and, you know, recognizing, oh, you know, I could realize non-duality, but those guts look really disgusting. So I'm going to eat guts until I know non-duality, which, you know, is kind of admirable. I can only eat gummy bears to figure out non-duality, unfortunately. Hence my long walks. Otherwise, I'll be demonstrating the gummy bear activity of the nature of mind and body. So Luipa says, you should regard the phenomena of samsara and nirvana neither as concrete nor abstract, nor as both or neither. That which is hard to point out to a childish person results from serving a master. Once you discover it through him, you will see this unseen nature. Right, so I'm going to repeat one part of it. That which is hard to point out to a childish person results from serving a master. Once you discover it through them, you will see this unseen nature. And then Tilopa, in one of his Vajrasangas, says, this intrinsic and innate wakefulness remains at the heart of all beings, and yet it is never perfected without being pointed out by a master. And then Gampopa says, not the domain of the ordinary person, nor known by someone of great learning. It is understood by the devoted, depending on the path of blessings and supported by the master's words. And Gyalwa Drikungpa says, secret mantra is the path of blessings. Unless you receive a master's blessings, whatever you realize is constructed by thought, and thought is taught to be superficial and obscuring. Therefore, serve a master and supplicate them tirelessly. Thus, the way to unmistakably realize the view, the nature of the basic state, depends on devotion and blessings. And so this isn't to say, you know, I think a lot of people will hear these things and be like, you know, I suck. You know, like, I can't do this on my own. You know, and that's not what's being pointed out here. What's being pointed out is very pragmatic. And the Buddhist, you know, faith tradition is exceptionally pragmatic. And really what's being pointed out here is rely on the experience of people who know more than you do. You know, that's it. If you want to, you know, if I want to know where the best candy is so that my son Marcus could be really, he's like, wow, my dad really has like secret knowledge, then I would have to ask a master, like the candy master, and say, you know, candy master, like, where's the best candy in this part of Brooklyn? And then they would say, oh, you know, it's over here. I didn't know. And then after school, I'd pick up Marcus and say, hey, let's walk over here. They've got the best candy. So sometimes we don't know, you know, just because we don't have the answer in front of us or we haven't had the lived experience yet, doesn't mean, you know, there's no hope for us. And sometimes it takes, you know, relying on people who have just a little bit more experience than us to be able to move into, you know, greater senses of lived experience in our practice. As it is. And there's this point that Gampopa brings up that, you know, all of this depends on the path of blessings. And then, you know, devotion is also included here. And so this is also an interesting point to look at. You know, you find in both the Mahamudra and Dzogchen traditions that guru yoga and reliance on a guru is, you know, essential. And while that is the case, again, and so I've said this, in other places. So, and some of you may have been to those other places, so you may have heard this from me before. But really, what the experience of the guru is in guru yoga is not necessarily the supplication of some person. It can be, right? It could be the Karmapa, it could be, guru yoga around Marpa or Milarepa or Kempopa, or a guru yoga around another Karmapa, Karmapakshi, for example, Mikyo Dorje or Guru Rinpoche or whomever. But really also guru yoga is about, it's really more about the experience of open receptivity, right? And so guru yoga gets a little challenging sometimes in the Western context. And I've heard, many people say, I'm really sheepish about taking a teacher or, finding a guru or a lama or anything because of messed up power dynamics that can occur and have occurred in cases. And I totally get that. And so the guru yoga is not about supplicating and lowering ourselves necessarily to another person as much as it is about opening up to be able to receive and to be vast and also to be vulnerable, because ultimately we can't go very deeply into our practice if we can't be open to the experiences that arise just naturally when we're sitting in meditation. And that can be a bit of a tall ask sometimes, depending on what we've, just lived through, or where we're coming from, or what past experience we've had. And so, we need to also take care of ourselves to be able to move towards this experience of greater openness in a way that is also safe, and so you find this actually kind of fascinatingly, if you look at the story of Milarepa's life. It's not that he just he goes from murdering all these people to enlightened, right? He needs to go through this process of purification, so to speak. That's kind of the way it's described. But this purification really isn't necessarily like he was dirty and then he became clean. It's more that his mind was tight and tormented and full of suffering, like ours typically is, to a mind which is open and vast, self-aware, receptive, able to hold whatever arises, able to reflect back its brilliance, able to reflect its innate perfection. But in the beginning, sometimes we don't have that capacity. That can be too much. That can be scary. That can be destabilizing. So Guru Yoga is a very powerful way of slowly kind of opening up, for lack of a better term, like this metaphor, opening up our heart center, opening up, opening up, opening up, opening up, opening up to the fact that we are perfect, opening up to the fact that the mind is vast and pure, opening up to the fact that each one of us have the same nature, and that same nature is fundamentally awakened. And sometimes we can't hear that in the beginning, and this is why sometimes these practices need to be practiced a little slowly. The ultimate Guru Yoga, and we kind of discussed this a little bit in the last class when we were looking at that short Guru Yoga by Khenpo Gangchar, is the ability to open up to experience the complete perfection of mind. The ultimate guru is naturally liberated mind. And so sometimes this is a really great place to start off, actually, if there's not a lot of trust and not a lot of ability to see past some of the complicated dynamics that can arise, in the Vajrayana nature of having a relationship with a teacher or a guru or lama or whatever. So it's important to kind of, consider this and consider where we stand. I mean, I think the other thing that's important is like, we're all growing, we're all changing, we're all moving. And so just because we may occupy a particular point right now does not mean that in 6 months, our situation will, won't be different, or in 1 year, or in 2 years, or in 5 years, or in 10 years. And there's also a lot with chemists in terms of chemistry too, with teachers, just as much as we will find that we have chemistry with people and we can't explain why, that arises as well. When after Boku Rinpoche died, all Boku Rinpoche students were trying to figure out with whom should I study next. Some people stuck with the abbot of Boku Rinpoche's monastery. A lot of people went to study with Trungpa Rinpoche. And for me, when Boku Rinpoche died, I was like, oh, I know exactly who I need to go study with. It's Gyaltsen Rinpoche, because he was so scary and intense. And I was like, okay, like Boku Rinpoche was like this ocean of love. Now I'm gonna go get scared. And fascinatingly enough, like I had gone to see Trungpa Rinpoche once, and I've actually met him a number of times, and I've always found his teaching to be very hard. It's very hard for me to understand. I just never could. It never connected, right? And I've received teachings from him and teachings from other teachers on the same topic, same text, and I will still have like no memory of Trungpa Rinpoche's teachings, and then all the other teachers I do remember. So I was like, okay, like for whatever reason, no disrespect to him, there just isn't that kind of connection there. So let me go where I do have connection. And so there's that piece too, and the other thing also is just with kind of my lived experience of traveling through Asia and studying a long time here and there, it never helps to second guess the connections we do have. I've met my root teacher was an Ani, a nun, and a lot of people wouldn't respect that, or wouldn't necessarily respect her, and so for me, I would cover my ears. I don't want to hear people denigrating, my root Lama. I don't want to see people denigrating my, root Lama. So sometimes we also have to actively protect, ourselves, simply because in the kind of frenzy of induced emotion in our religiosity, sometimes we parade around, oh, my Lama's so great. Check out my Lama. Your Lama's, who heard of your Lama? Like, I don't know who that person is. Mine is, king of the universe, queen of the universe. Yours is just some like cowherd, and so are you. It's your stupid Lama. Like you hear this stuff all over, like Bodh Gaya, you go around and, it's just, and you can't fault people. They're all just really kind of blissed out and, not in control of themselves in those moments. But so anyway, there's a lot to be said. I've been drinking espresso, so I have a lot of energy. So Tsali Natsugoranjo goes on saying, having thus seen the nature of the view, how then should one practice? In the case of the lower vehicles, not popular statement, you are taught to establish the view as emptiness by analyzing with discriminating knowledge. The practice is then to train in combining emptiness and compassion, and to endeavor in gathering accumulations and purifying obscurations. Commonly, both the outer and inner secret mantra teach you to train as a unity in the development stage of deity yoga, in the completion stage with and without attributes, within the state that is sealed with the view. It is indeed wonderful that by being ingenious at using skillful means, the Buddhists have taught all of these different classifications to influence disciples with complex inclinations. However, in this context, the practice of Mahamudra and Dzogchen, the very pinnacle of vehicles, is not like these other teachings in which their meditation and view remain disconnected. Here, the view and meditation are not kept separate, but are simply an indivisible unity. The view of seeing your basic state, not by fabricating it, but by allowing it to resume its natural flow. So I'm just going to repeat this last point. The view of seeing your basic state, not by fabricating it, but by allowing it to resume its natural flow. Just letting mind be. According to people's different capacities, for the highest, the unity of shamatha and vipassana is pointed out from the very first. There's no need to compose the meditation state and pursue the post-meditation. Instead, realization and liberation are simultaneous within the all-pervasive expanse of your innate nature. For those with medium and lesser capabilities in common, bring forth signs by means of preliminary practices, and then thoroughly resolve the view. When you're easily able to see the nature of mind, maintain the quality of stillness, deeply relaxing the body, speech, and mind. Don't pursue any thoughts about past or future, but allow your present wakefulness to look directly into itself. Neither inhibit nor indulge the six senses, six impressions of sights, sounds, smells, and so forth. Towards every experience, whatever takes place, be awake, lucid, and fresh, while maintaining a balance between being collected and relaxed. When too concentrated, you manufacture a state. When too lax, you diffuse into the undercurrent of thought. Instead, to simply remain undistracted within itself is supreme shamatha, which is taught to be the foundation for meditation training. These days, there seem to be some practitioners of shamatha who regard the state of non-thought, in which the six senses are shut down, as the most imminent. This is called the serenity of cessation, and it is taught to be a flaw and a sidetrack of meditation training, which only results in a rebirth in either a formless realm or as a naga or an animal. Either way, it never leads to liberation. So there's a lot in that. But just going back briefly, the view of seeing your basic state, not by fabricating it, but by allowing it to resume its natural flow, is the essence of what our practice is, right? In both Mahamudra and Dzogchen, the primary point of the practice is to rest openly and freely in the experience of mind without altering it, without moving it in this direction or that direction, without altering any kind of thought activity that might arise, especially thought activity that might appear to be really banal. Oh, gummy bears. Oh, chores. You know, whatever is coming up. Just let that come, let it go. But the big pieces are to not fabricate, not create, Yeah, and it's fascinating. Like I've been having some really lovely conversations with people about spiritual bypassing. And yeah, yes, it's an important thing to think about, kind of remain mildly aware of. And it's interesting too to look at bypassing, like how we might bypass in shamatha practice. Needing this to be different, and needing a dose of space or non-thought, a dose of stillness. That being said, when stillness arises, how can you be sure you're not bypassing? You know, and so the question becomes, and I'm going to throw this out to everybody, is how can you know that? You know, and the best way to do this is to experience and look. Over time, one thing that definitely happens with practice in this way is that the mind just kind of naturally settles quite quickly. Right? And there's no amount of time, you know, no fixed amount, you know, after 30 hours, this will happen. You know, we're all very different, but it does happen. And then we can find ourselves settling, and then we kind of very quickly settle into an experience of mind that's very still. And so just resting with that if that happens, and not worrying about bypassing if we're not grabbing, you know, if we're not preferencing, if we're not escaping. And even the experience of Rigpa when that arises, allowing that to happen. And for us to not have that bypass radar too strong, right? Because that will mess it up. Oh, Rigpa. Am I bypassing? Like, you know, we don't want to get into this discursive place of like, what's actually happening? Right, so how to be able to have a practice where we're not poking and pulling, we're not manipulating, we're not trying to make anything. We're not trying to be like that person who we like to spend time with who won't stop talking, constantly talking about everything. Oh, this cup. Oh, that's great. Oh, that sound. Wow, there's that sound. Oh, wow. What are you thinking right now? Right, so we're not being like that. Labeling. This is not secular mindfulness. Label. We're not labeling. We're resting into our basic state. Yeah, that's a very good observation, Bhumi Sparsha. You know, there's clarity and dullness. And, you know, so there's this point about, you know, these days, this is this kind of perennial thing. These days, everyone's not a good meditator these days. They used to be good, but back when I was a kid, but these days, there seem to be some practitioners of shamatha who regard the state of non-thought in which the six senses are shut down as the most eminent. This is called the serenity of cessation, and it's taught to be a flaw and a sidetrack of meditation training. So it's kind of like being injected by a warm, fuzzy dullness. and being like, oh, check out my shamatha, man. Like, it's like this blanket on my lap. Like my legs are all warm and tingly. That's not what Milarepa was all about. But so what's really great about Bhumi Sparsha's observation is that it's lived experience, right? So knowing that there's some felt knowledge with which you can rely on in your practice, like I've done some dark retreats recently, and in the complete absence of light, as you're kind of settling into the space, you don't know where anything is. Like, so it takes some time to kind of get some felt well, you could say like even what's it called, muscle memory as to the bathroom is over here, the sink is over here, this is where I sit to take my meals, right? And so in the beginning you're kind of like fumbling around and tripping and hitting your head, stuff like that. After a while you kind of get a sense, oh, if I walk this way I'll bang into the wall, and then the sink is right next to that. So with this too, we're fumbling around in our meditation experience, but as we gain knowledge and experience, that is quite useful. Maintain the quality. So when you're when you are easily able to see the nature of mind, maintain the quality of stillness. Deeply relaxing the body, speech, and mind. So deeply relaxing body, speech, and mind. Like, relax. Don't be super, where is it? Don't pursue any thoughts about the past or future, but allow your present wakefulness to look directly into itself. Neither inhibit nor indulge the six sense impressions of sights, sounds, smells, and so forth. Towards every experience, whatever takes place, be awake, lucid, and fresh, while maintaining a balance between being collected and relaxed. Be at ease. One thing that's kind of fascinating to me, it'd be fascinating to have a conversation about this, but maybe we'll just transition right into conversation. This idea of like what Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like how that arises for Mahamudra practitioners. Like, what do you need to be in place to be able to rest into this kind of open space? And not in terms of like, religious things, like, oh, I need this pile of texts, I need all these empowerments. Not like that, because it's a little bit of a cop-out. But what do you really need to relax into an ability to just let things be, including your own mind, your own emotions, your physicality. What is it that you need? And then how can you be aware of that while also not seeing that as an imperfection? So anyway, I don't know if anybody has any thoughts about that or anything else, but maybe we could, oh yeah, air, water, food, retreat boundaries. Any other thoughts? Space and time from distractions and emotional upheaval. Yeah.
The ability to feel,
Mhm.
like, just, I don't know what I mean by that, but like feel.
Mhm. Intention, writes George.
I need contact with
Hmm.
Sangha big time. It's hard. I think in the last 2 years, it's been really hard to settle in because of the pandemic and an inability to feel this contact right here.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, just out of curiosity, where do you live? What part of the country?
Oh, I'm in New York City.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was talking a little bit during the peer-led sit just about feeling a bit bereft after Shambhala, and while I do have another song I'm with, there's still a certain amount of distance.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah. And Melissa writes blessings from gurus and meditation instruction. Yeah. It's a really, and please keep going with any of these things. Oh yeah. So Gendon writes for them the presence of a scrutinizable sense of compassion is one of the ways I understand there's bypassing compassion / love for self for self / other is what is needed for touching into the nature of mind. Even when there's strong emotion or pain, if there's a sense of holding those rather than overly identifying with them. Yeah. Now, the great thing about this kind of question is there's no right answer because it's situational. Every answer is right? Every answer speaks to exactly what is coming up. And it's also really helpful just in terms of, I don't know how this is going to sound, but like looking at the mechanics of meditation. Because I think that there is a broadly like put like mechanical technology to keep going, like vibing off of Bob Thurman, inherent in the meditative process that might have a baseline that many people connect and relate to in their own way, right? So it's not all super objective, but there is a structure that I think on average works reasonably well, which is why we have this whole thing that's been passed down. But there are these very unique, specific aspects that need to be honed for us as individuals. So Milarepa, having murdered all these people. Then there's Marpa, right? This really kind of irascible, really bad-tempered person, really prideful, kind of violent, perhaps. That's his personality. Then there's Gampopa, like this kind of like, I'm just kidding, but I was gonna call him a goody two shoes. I don't think he was like that, but there's Gampopa, like Gampopa, Milarepa, Marpa, three very different personalities, right? And then Gampopa's nephew, maybe he's the goody two shoes, like this whole process of keeping things in the family. And then there was Naropa and there's Talopa, there are specific emotional needs we have and specific care needs. There are specific things we feel, what we relate to, what we don't relate to. and keeping this in the back of our mind is really helpful, like as a Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of thing for, you know, for Vajrayana practice. Because really, like the thing that has always been, so Ani Zangmo, my root teacher, and actually I'm going to invite everyone to do this because this is very fun. Wake up early in the morning when it's still dark and sit, eyes open, just in shamatha. And as the light begins to fill the room and you're able to make out the forms and the colors and the arrangement of everything, just be there, take that in, and experience that. And the one thing she used to make me do this like every morning. So you sit outside, it'd still be dark. She had this kind of like rooftop that had all those potted plants, all the flowers, and it would go from dark, can't see anything, to lit, and then you can make out every single form. And to allow oneself to be open and vulnerable and able to directly experience these things without the projection of concept, without the projection of labeling, requires an element of intimacy that is absolutely stunning. And also the source of a considerable amount of bliss when we're able to just let things happen. So my curiosity is whether or not between now and I'm not going to be able to teach next week because I have a class at Union Theological Seminary to teach, unfortunately. So for 2 weeks, if you can do this maybe twice or 3 times over the next 2 weeks, wake up early from dawn until the room wherever you are is lit. And if you could do this outside too, that's great also. So you can hear the birds starting to wake up and be active, and perhaps people or other things. And then just allow yourself to rest into the intimacy of letting things just be as they are, without changing anything, modulating anything. And then take a moment to just reflect on what it is like to do this in other arenas where there are people, with our emotions, with things that are difficult. And then remain curious about what your needs are to rest into that kind of very profound, open vulnerability that can be, a little intense. I'll just put it that way, but gorgeous, vivacious, undulating, marvelous, openness. And then if you can't, if it's hard to connect to that, that's fine too. Be aware and curious about that experience. Again, try and let whatever happens, preferred, not preferred, come and be a teacher. You let your mind be your Lama. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. And I'm sorry if I rambled. It's lovely to see everybody. And maybe, we can just dedicate the merit from any benefit that came from this rambly, weird teaching to all beings who, at the end of this week, have died and are in the bardo. All beings who are, perhaps you could say, caught up with their mental reactions to death, to having died, caught up in the emotional reactions, anger, jealousy, rage. Then, of course, dedicating the merit to every practitioner of Mahamudra and Dzogchen throughout the universe. May all of these incredible yoginis and yogis quickly become liberated so that they can help bring benefit around the world, around the universe. May you all have everything that you need. Take good care, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lama Justin.
Thanks, Lama Justin.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.